The foundation of ethics. It seems to me there is no such thing as the good, inasmuch as there is no such thing as the bad. But there is such a thing as a plurality of good and bad. One is reminded that the proclamation of ethics is a confession of one's moral preference. Not that the student is actually putting forth the absolute or objective identity of good and evil, but that he or she is telling us the thing he or she deems best, the kind of moral system he or she desires. But this is not the end of ethics. For morality, insofar as it is based on reason, insofar as it is evidential, insofar as it can be falsified, is a thing which can be argued, is a morality which can be exchanged. The very fact that morality has evolved and continues to evolve, which would seem to be a point that not even the surest moral philosopher could deny, is proof that morality is, in a certain sense, subjective. Every person in this room has morals. But the existence of these morals does not mean that morality itself is objective. To say it does is merely to manifest that one is confused about the nature of one's values, as to what those values really are. We might call this a kind of ontological confusion, a mistake in the act of identity, an arbitrary contrivance of categories in the direction of one's personal preference. Though it is best to dispense with phantoms, where one cannot know, one should not speak. But because so much of our society is dominated by superstition, even the best thinkers tend to gravitate toward the preposterous and absurd. It is therefore necessary to say, the great other is not needed for ethics. In fact, my friends, the great other only serves to confuse the issue of ethics. To invoke the great other as a necessary means for ethics is simply to change the subject. In formal terms, this is called a red herring. Ethics, morals, are something which have to do with the social life of man. And as such, in order to have a productive conversation on ethics, one must have a conversation on man. Man is not only the center, but the very axiom from which all ethics proceed. We might say that ethical discourse presupposes the centrality of man. Whatever man is, therefore, whatever conditions he is faced with, thrust into as a living organism, will determine the nature and outcome of his ethics. In one sense, ethics are forced on man by nature. In this sense, they are a reaction to the conditions of life as man seeks to retain the vitality of what he is, as man seeks to thrive. Ethics are what happen as a result of life, as man tries to live against the grain of nature in order to increase his quality of life. Ethics are not stagnant, but constantly shifting, which means they represent the problems generated by the social organism. Just so long as this organism is evolving, ethics will be evolving. That is to say, the problem of ethics will remain. However, the fact that ethics represents an existential, philosophical problem is not a justification for some antiquated supernaturalism, but a proof for the necessity of an ethics in progress, or what we might call an ethics of revision. And if we must constantly revise, then how can we logically be moral realists? How can we speak of objectivity? It is perhaps the case that society presupposes, more or less, the necessity of moral precepts in order for society to exist, in order for society to thrive, in which case we have leverage in relation to the ordering of society itself, which naturally puts a restriction on the sovereignty of the individual. But this is very far from proving the existence of supernatural or metaphysical ethical properties. Quite the contrary. This proves that in the absence of ontological hierarchies, we can still have an ethics of relevance, which is to say, an ethics of exchange. In light of the goal of society, which is an existential quality, man finds the foundation for what it means to be moral. One of the most important questions we can ask in relation to any ethical claim is from whence the claim itself proceeds. For it would seem behind this discourse we find the true source of morality, the place from which the precept itself not only proceeds, but begins to exist. Man is the Genesis, which is to say, he is the beginning and end of ethics. To claim there is an entity, our transcendent ideal beyond this, is to go beyond the nature of ethics itself. Thank you.